Okie dokie. So we should be good to go. And all righty, I think we're in good shape there. Let me take us over here. Now, the first thing you probably want to do, if you haven't already, would be to come over and go into the Files section over at Canvas and take a look at the first thing to do would be to go to the Modules section, excuse me. And we're at module or week 5, and we're going to look at this example, which is this hardware nuts, that case, and then we're going to then we're going to look at XLS7, okay? And I've got 2 resources for you there, and then of course we had the break-even and analysis and economic order quantity quiz, and you had I had told you where those resources were, and then you had the few text, that chapter 6, that quiz as well. So we had quite a bit going on. Now, once you've come over here and you're in the module, now you're ready to go over to the Files section. And, pardon me, you don't need to do that. Go here first, and you want to go find, and you want to click on the resources for the Microsoft Excel cases. Okay, and click on that, and that will show you this document that I have open already, or this spreadsheet. And the particular business problem we're going to look at is economic order quantity, and we're also look a little bit at nested functions. And and what we're going to look at is the issues that we have when we run a company. And we have to make sure we don't order too little or too much, and that's economic order quantity. And then the situation where we have we use the economic order batch, where we're making sure we don't sell too much, we don't make too much, and we don't make too little. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I covered some of this in part 2 that I published over there in the announcements section to make up. So I'm going to go through this, but not as extensively, because I planned also tonight to take a look at if we get a chance, to take a look at XLS8 and get that done as well. So, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll use a different color for that one, just so we're in good shape. And there we go. And this is just so I can keep track of things and where we are, what's going on. So as it shows, there are a couple of files that you want to get, and we're going to be working over in chapter 81 of the textbook. Okay. Now I have those files downloaded over here, the Excel companion files, and so it's not going to be that big of a deal for me to get those. And you'll go find the chapter 81, and you're going to find the practice files. Okay, well, I've already used them, put them up there. So you'll want to download the practice files and then be ready to work with them. Now, so when you go over to the files section, I'll just show you. All right. You're going to kind of go in and come on down and grab those files, and it's called the Excel companion files. And so we want content Excel companion content number 2, that zip file, because it contains the files from chapter 81 that we're going to be working with. So you'll want to go and get the Excel companion content file, download it, and then open up chapter 81 and the practice files. We're going to work on, as I mentioned again, we're going to work on the economic order quantity, and just real quickly in the nested function. Now, as I said before, if I'm not mistaken, went over this in part 2, so I'm probably going to spend some time also on XLSX 8. And in this chart, as I say every week, what kind of business problem or or procedure are we working with? And then I'll show you the practice file, okay? And then the file that has the file that we'll be working with to upload. And then we have the chapter and the area where you can find it, okay? And so we're going to be working out of both of those zip files tonight. So the first thing you want to do, if you haven't, is to take a look at it. Now, to make sure that we facilitate this, hopefully you've uploaded the files that you needed to, because I made it a point, if I'm not mistaken, to go ahead and upload those so you could have them, upload them, and we could talk about them. Okay? Yes? Okay. Now, let me go over here and see. Is there anybody that has any questions I could help with?
I'm at it right now, technically.
Okay. Anybody here have a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay. All right, Maddie, I hope you're not having a beer party, so I'm going to mute your microphone. Hello. And I wouldn't dare turn the video on. Lord help us. I'm teasing you, Maddie. All right. Now, I have an example for you each time, and when we look at the economic order quantity, and again, I mentioned this in part 2. I don't know how many of you might have looked at it. All right, I just haven't gone over to check to see that. But when we do the economic order quantity and the economic order batch, we're talking about trying to optimize. That is, make the best use of our resources we can, given what we're trying to get accomplished. Okay, so we do that, and let's see, we've got Jamie, Bruno, Cassidy, Maddie, Go8, Heath, Nan, Shireen on the phone. All right, now let's go up here for a moment and open up the file Hardware Nuts. Okay, you'll see that there in the module 5. This is an example, as I say, for XLS 7. Now, I'm going to download this file, and when I download it, I always just go ahead and show it in the folder so I know where it's at. And I'm going to put it on my desktop, and this is an example. Now, what I try to do is to give you a good balance between the textbook and what you can get from that and some other work I've done in the past that will kind of counterbalance that, because the textbook focuses more upon using the software than it does upon trying to get some meaning or understanding from why you're using the software. So I want to put this down for a sec, and I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to file source, and here we've got the Excel, and that's the textbook for the course, and I'm over here in chapter 81, and we give you those 2 figures. Now, I had someone stop by the office today and ask me about these, okay? Now, I will always have what you can upload for your work, all right? Now, so I post it there so you can get the credit for the workshop, and I try to post it in a timely fashion, but also so that we can have some time to just talk about what the software is, what we're trying to do with this particular function or sets of functions or process, okay? So I want to walk you through this. Now, this case, we get a case up here, and we've got these 2 bullet points, and we get some questions, and they want to know how. This is an economic order batch question, this first bullet point, because it says, how large of an order should it make, okay? Well, let's see, it's on sales and supply for each side. So, okay, so that's an economic order problem. I'm sorry. So in economic order, we try to balance off some things. The cost per order, which is more like a fixed cost, it doesn't matter typically if you order one item or 1,000, it'll cost you the same amount of money. So you remember when we talked about the total cost equation and contribution margin and fixed costs and variable costs and break-even units and break-even dollar volume. When we look at in inventory, the cost of ordering almost is like a fixed cost. So there in that example, they've got over there, you can see it in cell B2 as K, all right, and the cost per order is $10. That's there in cell C2. Now that's not the actual file, obviously, but a screenshot of what you're looking at. And then as you come down, you've got the annual holding cost per unit. Holding cost means, again, what it costs me to keep the stuff around. I have to store it. I have to make sure it's secure. If it's perishable, I've got to make sure I pay for I have refrigerated, etc. So we try to get some amount of annual holding cost per unit. Then we get the annual demand. How much of the stuff do we sell? You with me? I'm going down. Now I'm down at the row A4. Okay. And then as I go down to A5, I'm talking about the order quantity, and that's the EOQ, and it's 100, and it equals the square root, okay, and that SQRT is the square root function in Excel, and it's the square root of 2 times K, which is the cost per order, times D, the annual demand, divided by H, okay? And H is the annual holding cost. And what we get is an order quantity, an economic order quantity of 100. Now, as we come down to the bottom of that, and we look at that row A9, we're going to see that the orders per year will equal the demand over the EOQ. So we got 100 times 100 gives us 10,000. That's simply, that's really all there is to this. Now, we're trying to balance off fixed cost of ordering versus the annual cost of holding the inventory. The cost to hold inventory is a variable cost. It varies according to the number of units I'm holding. And so just like when we had that case and we looked at the variable cost to sell, it's the same thing with inventory. The more of the stuff I have, the higher the cost. The lower the amount of the stuff I have, the lower the cost. And so if we look there mysteriously, we find out that the EOQ is 100, and we make and then the annual orders per year is 100, and we see that demand divided by the EOQ. So 100 times 100, we get the 10,000. Now in the video, part 2, I played around with this a little bit in a spreadsheet, okay? And I said, well, what would it look like if the cost per order was 15 or 20? And so you can go back and take a look at that if you didn't look at part 2, although you really should have, because I went into some great detail with that, okay? So that's the economic order quantity, and we're looking at how much should we order. Now, I want to get this file open here, all right? And this is the hardware nuts file, okay? Now, this is from a previous case, and it's a good example because it's got a lot more meat to the bones. You see formatting, etc. This is really like a dashboard, an inventory dashboard, okay? And I'm going to walk you through it, and it has all the components of what a good spreadsheet should have. First of all, it has an ID. Okay, what is this thing supposed to do? Yeah, what's the name of it? We always ask, are there any macros? Okay, and the date that it was created. And then we've got an assumptions area. And notice what I did here with the assumptions. All right, I went ahead and I used a different color. And what I'm doing is I'm starting with assumptions, and then I go over to a little calculator for lead time, and then your eyes will come back down to the main computation and output area. And you'll see that I've used a different color there. Now I'm going to go into the name manager for just a moment, and we'll click on the formulas. All right, and I'll click on the name manager, and you'll see I only use use two names here. I got a little bit lazy. Fixed cost of ordering, okay, and the inventory carrying costs. Okay? And I've got those two figures there for you, and which, if you need to, you can use them in the query. Now, let's start take a look there at row 11, and and what we have here is pretty typical. There's a little bit of more bones on it. The package description. Then in column C, we've got, well, let me start with column A. We've got the product number, and I'll just highlight this whole thing so you can see it. The product number, then the package, the product description or package description, how much we have on hand, how much we have on order. Now, what we have on hand and what we have on order, okay, is what we call the balance available. You say, now, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. The stuff you have on hand, okay, but the stuff you have on order, how are you able to count that as being part of the balance available? Well, we do it for a simple reason. We could call our vendor and say, I've got to have it tomorrow. I've got to have it in 2 days, and I'll pay you a premium. Or we may have deliberately, to manage our supply chain, have it in process. All right. There are a lot of companies, typically distributors, who will order using two media. One will be a truck, and the other will be by rail. When you order stuff by rail, it's much slower. And if you carry perishable goods, there are limits on how long they will hold it for you, but they have specialized equipment to take care of that. And if I don't have enough scale within if I don't have the size or scale in my operation to take in all of that inventory, much less take care of it, I have to receive it, and then I have to store it, okay? Then I'm going to use a lot of stuff, and I'm going to use my vendors as a place to inventory my stuff. All right? And now, your vendor will play an opposite game where they'll want to oversell to you so they can have you carry their inventory. It's an ongoing kind of thing. But so we notice we've got the unit cost, annual usage. We have the order point. This is something that's predetermined. And then the day's lead time, okay? And I have a little calculator up there you could use if you wanted to figure out that. And then the economic order quantity. I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to hopefully put it on a notepad and try to make some sense of it. Okay? And let's see here. That was from class earlier today. I'll go back in here. And let's grab an application I can use real quickly. Office. And let's find Microsoft Word. Well, they put us through here, the Microsoft Office tools, and I would like to find, well, hopefully it's just out here on the thing. Here it is. It made me a shortcut. I forgot about that. All right. I'm gonna paste this nested statement. Now let me size that up for you so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. And then we'll talk about what it's telling us. Well, let's see here. I know what I'm going to do with this. Let me change the orientation. There we go. And now we can bring this down just a hair. And we'll get it all on one line so it makes some sense. There we go. Now, here it is as what we call a nested function, all right? And we're using an if statement. And here I'm saying equal the square root, I'm using the square root function, 2 times the fixed cost of the order, okay, times F12. Now, F12, we'll put some English to F12, and we'll go back in here for just a moment, and we'll look at F12, all right? And I want to come over here to F12, and F12 is going to be the annual usage. Okay? So F12 in that case is the annual usage. Like I said, I was lazy and didn't name all the variables. So it's 2 times the fixed, 2 times, okay, the product of the fixed cost per order times the annual usage, and that's divided by the inventory carrying cost as a percentage of the inventory value times E12. And we'll look at E12, okay? And we're going to see that E12, okay, E12 is going to be the unit cost. When you look at this, what you see is that we're balancing the cost of ordering versus the cost of holding inventory and the value that holding inventory, and we value it based upon some percentage of the inventory value. So we're trying to make achieve a balance here using the EOQ. Well, and we'll pop this just up here for a second. Now, once I've got the EOQ, and remember, I'm doing a conditional statement, okay? And I'm going to compute the square root of all of that, and that will give me my EOQ. And then I compare it versus the balance available. And I use some conditional formatting there to catch my eye if I needed to reorder. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to click here, and I'll go click Home, and I'm going to click on Conditional Formatting. And I'm going to click Manage Rules. And here what it will tell me that if the cell contains yes, then we're going to use this red background and dark red ink, or font, excuse me, so that we indicate, hey, we need to reorder. Otherwise, it's blank. Okay? And here we check to see if the balance available, okay? We check that, and again, we take if F11, okay, if J11, excuse me, if the balance available is less than or equal to G11, then yes. Otherwise, we have a quote mark there, an empty space, and then another quote mark, and we close it off. Everybody see that? Yeah? That's all that we do. But we have a very nice dashboard that tells us, what have we got on the hand, all right? How much is out there with a vendor? How much do we need to reorder? When do we reorder, etc. Okay, so that's the fullest and the richest example I could give you. And again, notice I took your eye, or should have taken your eye, from the left to the right and then back down to the middle to the table, and then we use the reorder that reorder column that catches our eye to say, okay, here's an action I need to take on a given item. Now, in the past, what I've done is I'll come over here and I'll take, for example, I'll come to A9, and I'll go ahead and copy all that, all right? and I'll set it right back on the other side of the table. And you say, why do you do that? Well, I've got a lot of columns between that product number. And even though I've got all borders, it just helps me to see it a little easier. And this top up here basically is just, I've got, it's just a calculator, and you can use GoSeek to figure out the lead time that you want to have, and you can play around with it just a little bit, okay? So I'm going to close that off, and we'll go back here, and we're going to go get, and I'm going to get that EOQ file, but actually we have it over here. So, well, I'll talk about it in the text. It's already there, and I had it there for you to load up for the workshop, so I want to just, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here. But here's the EOQ equation, all right? Okay? Again, the fixed cost is the cost of ordering. The variable cost is the cost it takes, the holding cost. That is, I have the stuff here at my business, and I'm trying to balance that off, okay, with the annual cost per unit, holding costs. So I'm trying to strike a balance. I don't want to order too much. I don't want to order too little. Now, the authors take us from that to giving us an economic order batch, and that's EOB, okay? Now, I understand this isn't exciting. It's boring until your stuff doesn't get to you on time. And it's really exciting when you promised a customer that it would be there tomorrow and the customer doesn't get it. I can tell you right now, there are two things that separate companies that are going to survive in the 21st century versus those that won't. First of all, they're going to have the ability to utilize the analytics at hand to understand their business and their customers' needs and how things are going to play themselves out if they follow their current course of action. The second is their ability to leverage and use supply chain. If you go in and you look at any product, let's take a car, the parts, the components for an automobile. When we say, well, it's made in the United States, well, you better put an asterisk beside that and find out how much the UAW says counts so you can say it's made in the USA. Because you've got parts coming from all over the world, or at least from all over the country. So if you don't have supply, you can't sell it. And I might have told this story on the second part two for last week, but I remember it's so vivid to me. My father was the last year he was alive, and he was doing some consulting, and he had a customer who had been his customer out in Western Oklahoma for nearly 40 years. And he went out to tell his customer, we're not selling to you anymore, which meant that that customer was out of business. Why? Because the customer didn't sell enough volume for the wholesaler to mess with them. It cost the wholesaler more money to meet their order than it did to just say goodbye. Now, that business person who lost their store was a very good person, an excellent business person, really understood the retail market they handled, but forgot about supply chain. And if you don't have that nailed down too, you're in deep trouble, big trouble. Well, here they give us another case to look at, another situation, and we start to look at the economic order batch. And this is the second little vignette they give us here. Now, when we talk about producing stuff, okay, we talk about what we call either continuous or batch production. You say, what do you mean by continuous production? The utility company engages in continuous production. If they decided to say, all right, we're going to stop pumping electricity through the lines at 6:30, we'll go dark. And we've used all of our electricity for the week. Back just after the wall in Berlin had fallen, the institution I worked for had a very deep ties with the Polish Business Academy. We had more Polish students than anywhere in the world outside of Poland. And the fall of the Soviet Union really began in the docks there in the shipyards in Poland. And it's something now that's for the history for you, but this is an interesting thing. After the wall fell, the government of Poland contacted us along with the United States Information Agency and said, we have 300 Soviet military officers who are about to be sent home. They're not going to have a job. We would like you to spend the summer with them and transition them to understanding the market economy, democracy, voting, money, etc. These are people who had never had money. Oh, there was a currency out there, but because they were military officers, the state just took care of everything for them. And suddenly, their employer was gone. Now, it was ironic to me. We'd be in the middle of a class like this, and the lights would go off. And the rector of the business school would come and say, I'm sorry, we don't have enough electricity. We haven't paid our bill to Russia. So we're going to have to get some hard currency together. And when we have it together, we can turn the power back on. Can you imagine living like that? Here's Poland that has the richest coal veins in the world. And what the Soviet Union did, the Russians, Putin, his people, because he was a KGB officer, they took the coal from Poland, took it to Russia, and sold it back to Poland, just like the mob operates. Okay? So if anybody who believes he's our friend and buddy, trust me, he's not. And so we went through those situations. Electricity is supposed to be a continuous product. It just flows. You don't notice it goes off till there's a storm or whatever. The opposite of that is batch production, where somebody calls and says, I need 1,000 widgets, or I need 2,000 widgets, or whatever. And so the authors here walk us through that process of economic order batch, where I respond to orders on a batch basis. And they walk us through and they give us the model there in those bullet points, each of the variables. Okay? And then as we scroll on down, we see the EOB. Now this time we're trying to figure out how much stuff should I make? If I make too little, I'm going to lose profits. I'm going to make my customers angry. I'm going to lose a sale. If I order too much, I'm going to be holding a lot of extra inventory I don't need. So I want to try to balance that out the best I can. So we use the EOB. And the EOB and the authors begin to walk us through that. We look at the cost per batch. And I'm still over here in the text. And if you're following along, you should see it. And then the annual holding cost per unit. That's $500. The annual demand. The annual production rate. Okay, and that's the annual production rate is how much do we make in a batch. Okay, and we've got the annual demand, the production rate, and then we got the batch size. And that looks suspiciously like that EOQ equation. And the holding cost per year, the order costs per year, and the total annual costs, excluding any purchasing. And then we compute the number of batches per year. And what they tell us is we're going to make 86 batches of this stuff a year. In order to make to meet our needs. And I've got that file loaded over there for you so you can see for yourself. Okay? So here we're in a balancing act. We're trying to use what we call the optimal amount, the best amount based upon our constraints. Okay? Well, that being said, I'm gonna diminish that down for just a sec. And here we've worked with these two, and now let's take a look at XLSX 8. And that's going to be over in the companion tube right here. So I'm going to get rid of that formatting and just no fill color. So we can highlight XLS8. Now we're going to look at what we call nested functions, and that's where we build one type of function into another. Now we've got a file there that's an example, and let's take a look at that. And so we'll go over into the files, and it's called Action Plastics Practice Done. So I'm going to go back into the files section. Okay. And I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to find Action Plastics Practice Done. And there it is. Now you won't see it. I'm going to publish it. You may have to refresh your screen, but I've got it there. And so you can go into into the files section and get that. So I'm going to download it. Anybody have problems seeing it yet? Is it there in the files? It's called Action Plastics Practice Done. Yes, no. Okay, I'm going to assume folks can see it. All righty. Now this is a company called Action Plastics, and we're going to take a look at how they can use some nested functions to compute an insurance premium for their employees. Then we have a couple of files from the textbook that we're going to take a look at. And I'm going to put that in the folder. Okay. And diminish everything down. And let's take a look at this for just a sec. Okay. I'm going to enable the editing. As it says, it's an insurance billing reconciliation system. I'm going to bring the size down just a little so you can see everything, not too much though. All right. And you'll see you're going to see an assumptions area in terms of the employee contribution. And let's look at that for just a moment. If it's only the employee, they don't pay anything. And the total premium, okay, and I'll bring this down just a hair more. The total premium is $240. So if you're employed by them and you don't have any dependents, you don't have anybody on the insurance with you, just you, it's $240, the employer pays it. Now, if you have one dependent, okay, it's $72 for the employee. And notice what I'm going to do. I'm going to use 04 minus 03. All right, and 04, okay, 04 is the one dependent total premium, and 03 is the no dependents. Everybody see this? Yes? No? Okay. So the next step on the journey is going to be a pretty simple one. If you have two or more dependents, if you've gone forth and been fruitful and multiplied as God commanded you, and you have 9 or 10, 11 kids, maybe 12 or 13, actually, you really have enough to start an NBA franchise, but or a baseball team or a football team. But for you, it will be 200. Your share will be $200. The employer will still pay the $240 that they pay, and your total amount will be $440. So it's on a sliding scale. So now we're going to use a little bit of a nested function, and I'm going to zoom this up a little bit and come on over here. Now here we have the data. Notice I have it in a different color. I have the assumptions at the top, and now I start to look down. We always move, in this culture, we move the reader's eye from the left to the right, from up to down. That's how people read things. And so it's the same principle here in this case. All right, now let's take a look at it for a moment. I've got a last name, a first name, a number of dependents, how many do you have, the employee contribution, the company's contribution, and the total premium. And so we can use these functions to determine who pays what. Now I'm going to start with this first employee here on starting at A8, row 8, excuse me. And I'm going to look at the employee contribution, and I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in a Word so we can see what we're talking about. And here we're saying if C8 equals 0, then the employee contribution is 0. And C8, what's C8? Let's look at that. C8 is the number of dependents. Okay? We'll go back here and look at the. Now, after the 0, notice there's a comma, and then we see if the employee contribution is 1, okay, then if C8 equals 1, all right, then we have the employee contribution for 1, and we have that contribution figure. And then if C8 is greater than 2, we have the employee contribution 2 or more. And here we've used these variables, we've put them into a name manager and used them. And then it's just simply a matter of a drag and drop to get those done. Now, how do I know they're in the name manager? Well, I'll click on there, and there they are. So in this case, it made a lot of sense for us to to use the name manager and name every variable so we got the correct answer. Let's look and see if it makes sense. And here we have somebody who has more than 2 dependents, and their total premium is $440. The employee pays $200. The company pays $240. The maximum amount the employee is going to pay is $200. Okay, the maximum amount that the company will pay is $240. So if you have more than 2 dependents, then it's going to be $440. If you come to a point now where you have 2 dependents, then notice the employee contribution is still $200. The company pays for $240. And then as we get 1 person, notice that drops. The employee's contribution is $72. The company pays $240. Notice they're always paying $240. Where it changes is based upon the number of dependents. And we come down to this last part where we have this Sunny Bindra who has no dependents, so doesn't have to pay anything. The company covers the contribution, and the total premium is $240. And so we've used those nested statements. Now we call them nested because watch what I'm going to do. Here's a conditional statement. And then the comment says continue. Here's the second one. And notice we worked it, and we're all still using C8 as our criterion. If C8 equals 0, I said that earlier, if C8 equals 1, now if C8 is equal to or greater than 2, then we have the contribution for 2 or more. And if you want to see it embedded in the file, it's simple. We'll go back there. And it goes hot. And you can see all the cells involved. And I'll bring that back down. Now, I would encourage you, as you get ready to take exam 2, to take note of the fact that exam 2, okay, is going to have 2 parts just like the last one. Exam 2 will have an objective exam. Part 2 will be a hands-on or practical exercise. And I may have you do some conditional statements, but you'll want to look ahead of those, look ahead and see. So there's that example that we had, okay? Now I'm going to close it off, okay? And I want to save any changes. Now I'm going to go and get the files from the textbook. And we know we're working over in chapter 12, so I'm going to go get the chapter 12 all right? And I'm going to close this off. And I'll go back up here to textbooks. And now I'm going to go back up to contents, and I'm going to find chapter 12. And since it's chapter 12, we're going to be working with that companion zip file number 1. And we'll find chapter 12. And they talk to us about if statements, all right? And we have figure 12.1, okay? And that file that we want to get, and here's the resources file again. Okay. I'll close this down for just a sec. We're going to get the if statement XLS, and says and then see the hedging tab. So you're going to get that out of that content Excel companion content zip 1. So I'm going to find that file. We're going to get it. I've got content 2. So I want to find the Excel companion 1. That's 2. That's 2 again. So I'm going to have to, I guess, download it for download 1 again. I probably got it over in that folder where I keep stuff, but that's okay. Back over to the files. I'll find the companion files. And there's the contents for zip file number 1. And I'm going to download it. And then I'll go to the chapter 12. And we'll download it. And It's going to take maybe a little bit. It's a pretty good size zip file. And it's done. Now I'm going to put it in the folder. And hopefully we can get it to show in the folder. It's going to play nice with us. We'll open it when we're done, and we should be opening up. So I'm going to get right into this kind of thing. Hang on here just a sec. Doesn't look like to me it's still downloading. Should be done there. Let me pop down here and look at these case files. Maybe I'll have one. Maybe I have it down here. Desktop. And there's content 2. Maybe that's the one. Nope, that's content 2 as well. So we got a bit of an issue here. Let's see if I can get it to download. Okay, it's going to open up there, and there we go. Going to take a bit of time. I'm sorry about this. It's just some heavy traffic, and this is a pretty big file. Now you're going to go in and you're going to look for, if I'm not mistaken, the file for chapter 12, and I think it's called If Statements XLS, and there's a tab on there, if I'm not mistaken, called Hedging, and that's the one I want you to look at. This is going to take just a little bit to get this downloaded, and I apologize about that. Once we've got it, we can start rolling. Okay? I'm going to stop now. Does anybody have any questions about what we've done so far? Anybody here or out there in Zoom land? Anybody? Okay. So let's hope it's clear as mud. Now, we've used the if statements to create, to test for conditions. And think back for a moment with the example with the employee insurance premiums. We were looking at how much the employee should pay given the number of dependents. So we really were saying if the employee has 0 dependents, the employee pays 0. I think, and then if the employee has 1 dependent, I think it was like $72. Then if they have 2 or more, the employee pays $200 and the employer pays $240. So we're just using that if statement, and we put it together to run these conditions and see what we end up with. We test for them, and if we don't find a match, we either do one of 2 things, and you'll see that. And I'll show you that while this is downloading. And I want you to see this real quickly. If this condition is met, then we use this figure. In other words, if C8 is 0, employee has 0 dependents, then we use the employee contribution is 0. You see the comma between the 0 and the if? If that wasn't the condition, then we continue. That's what the comment says to the machine. Then we put a parenthesis, and we say if C8 equals 1, that is how many, if the employee has 1 dependent, then we use we use the value for the employee has 1 dependent, and boom, it's $72. If that condition is met, if we find they didn't have 0 kids, they didn't have one dependents, but they had more than two or more, excuse me, then we used that figure for 2 or more, and that's what we charge the employee. So we charge the employee 0, 72, or 200, and then the employer, and then the employer pays the 240. But you follow what I'm saying. So we check for the conditions, and if we don't find the conditions met, then by default we can continue on, and that's what that comma is all about. Now I've got the content here, and let's look at it some more. Okay, and so we're going to go over here to chapter 12, and we're going to open up chapter 12, and I'm going to go to the practice files, and I'm going to look for the if statement, and there it is. Is everybody with me? Got the if statement. You're going to download it. All right, down to the desktop. Now, I'm going to open it up, and there should be a tab inside of it. Okay, called hedging. You see it? Now, let's go back over for just a minute, and the textbook will put some meat on the bones of this, okay? And we're giving this question here, okay? In terms of if I order up to 500 units of product, I pay $3 a unit. If I order 501, so I'm looking at the chart costs, and I'm looking to see how does that impact me in terms of what I get in terms of in terms of trying to hedge my bets by ordering enough stuff, and the price I'm going to have to come up with. All right. Now they move us on to something a little more easy to understand or more intuitive for us. And you'll see right here, I just purchased 100 shares of stock at a cost of $55 per share. Now we're dealing with a classic, typically in options. Okay? When you talk about options trading, here's what you mean. You buy a stock at $55, for example, as here in the textbook. You pay a premium for an option to sell that stock at that price on a certain date. Why would you do that? Well, if you think that the stock price is going to go to 61 bucks, then you're going to pay the 55 for the stock plus some kind of option premium, and you have the legal right to sell it at 55, and you get you get a stock worth 61. It could be just the opposite. If it's at 55 and you believe it's going to go down by a certain date, you'll have the right to sell it to somebody at $55 on a given date, and you'll pay an option fee. That's known as selling short because you believe the price of the stock. So let's say I sell you a share of stock, okay? And I have an option and we call it a call. I have an option to call you or to contact you and say, okay, I want to buy that. I want to sell my stock to you. This is a put at 55 bucks. No matter what the price is on December 1st, the price is either going to be more than 55 or less than 55. If it's more than 55, I'm coming out ahead because the stock's worth more than that. If it's less than 55, I'm selling at a profit. That's the general idea here, but it doesn't always work right. And I'll leave it to you when you take a finance course. If you haven't covered derivatives already, like options, futures contracts, etc. All I can say this is, when I took my second derivatives course, the prof told me this. with derivatives or any of these kinds of financial instruments, you have an unlimited ability to lose and a limited ability to win, which said to me, I don't want to mess with this stuff. Well, anyway, they're going to walk us through this, okay? And we see the inputs and the share price, the expiration price, the price of the stock now, a put cost. So I'm going to either I'm going to put it up for sale, and then the percent of the return that's hedged versus that which is unhedged. That means I covered for my losses. They're going to walk you through that. Now let's look for a moment, and we'll dig this down, and we're going to open up this file. Here are the number of puts. There's one share. So I'm going to sell for each put. I've got 100 shares. I've got 60 puts. I'm going to put them up for sale. I've got an expiration price. When my contract with you ends, or my option trading agreement ends, okay, the expiration price is $45. The price right now is $55. So right now, I'm selling short. Why? Because I believe the price will drop. Okay? I believe it's going to go down. So I'm preparing to buy the stock at the cheaper price and sell it to you at the higher price. That's what this really amounts to. And then I have a put cost is $5 each. And then I have a starting value. Now we'll look at the math of that, and it's the number of shares times the price now, okay, plus the put cost times the number of puts. We're walking into a little bit of financial derivatives and account, but that's okay. We're using the name manager. We have the text does a fairly good job of explaining to us what these are. So the starting value is the number of shares I have. Well, that makes sense. Times the current price. That's the price now. So I've got 60 shares at $55 plus the put cost, how much it cost me to put each of them up, times the number of puts, because I have to pay a premium or a contractual amount for each of those. Does everybody follow me what we're doing here? It's a little bit different when you start to look at options trading. Now, I use the term derivative, and I didn't use it properly. A derivative is a financial product whose value is based or indexed upon the value of something else. A good example is going to be currency. All right? So we take a look at this, and we'll come down and we'll start to look at the final stock price, the final put value, and the stock ended up at 20, and the final put value it's equal if A9, okay, and that's the stock price, is less than the expiration price. Then the expiration price times 89 and minus, A9, or we come up with 0, and we take that times the number of puts. And that's what we get for the final put value. And then we have the final share value. Now I paid $1,500 for the put, okay, and the value and the final value of the shares is the starting value, okay, is C9 plus B9. C9 is the final stock price, okay, start value, and that's C9 and B8. C9 is going to be the final share value plus B9, which is the final put cost, and then we just look at the percent of return that we've hedged. Hedging means I think something's going to happen in the future, okay? That's all it really means. And so we can compute that, and we're using the conditional statement to get that done. And then we get the percent return unhedged. And notice together, they should come close to about 100%, give or take. But that's the percent return that we've hedged, and we're losing money. And we keep seeing this. Now, as we move on down, it's just simply the final stock price, and you can see what begins to happen, okay? The higher the stock price, the final of the share values, and the return that I make. So we're using the if as a conditional statement to figure out what kind of return do we get on our how much of our return is unhinged. What we get if we have it sell today, if the price goes to 65. And that's all we're doing there. We're just walking through a set of contingencies. And what this lets us do is plan based on what might be the possible outcomes. Now, there's a point, what one could say is basically a break-even point, and it's right here at 45 bucks. Now, I'm losing here. Well, the true break-even point is probably going to be right here. The stock's going to have to be selling at 85. Well, we can be selling at, at 65, excuse me. And you can walk through some of the text narrative and get a feeling for it and see how the authors constructed that. But we're using the conditional formatting from the conditional statement, the equal if, as a means to say, okay, based on these assumptions above, the number of puts, the number of shares, the expiration price, the current price, the put cost, and the starting value, based on those assumptions, what are things going to look like if the final stock price, okay, rather than being 55, is 20? And you would anticipate that you're going to have a pretty massive loss. Now let's look at that percent return hedged. And notice it's C9, which is the final put value, okay? Pardon me, it's C9, which is the final share value, excuse me, plus B9, that's the final put value. If you have the put and the put's going to have a final value relative to the transaction. And we divide that, and then we subtract the starting value, and then we divide that by the starting value. So you kind of get like I guess you could call it kind of a standard deviation, or we really get more like a ratio kind of effect from it. That's all that's going on there. And I would leave it to you if you want to go out and look at the world of puts and calls and options and delve into it, that's fine. But we've built a model here to say, what does this look like? Okay. Now, the authors show us a percentage return unhedged. And that's where we haven't used the put. It's just we haven't done the hedge. Another example of this would be, let's say that I'm a manufacturer in the United States and I make, I don't know, airplanes. and I sell them to Japan. Now, I can, if I wish, demand that the Japanese pay me in dollars. But they may. But if the dollar is extremely strong, and versus the Japanese, I believe I think it's the yen. I'm not a currency trader. Then I have a problem. So I may, if I'm that customer in Japan, I may say, okay, I'm going to hedge this, all right, by naming them a price I'll pay in American dollars, and hope that the value of the dollar goes down. If it doesn't, then I've hedged some of that risk away. You'll want to take a look at the chapter, this section of it. You'll want to come and take a look at in the textbook, and then come and look at the file itself. Kind of let it sit and begin to think, okay? Because the options, I'm always saying, here's what I've got now. Here's what I think will happen with this asset tomorrow. And then we have to take into account the final value of the put. Now, where did I get the final value of the put? It's pretty simple. If A9, and again, that's the stock price, is less than the expiration price, which it is, then the expiration price, then we take the expiration price minus A9, and that condition is not met, then a 0, and we take that times the number of puts. And let's look at this for just a moment. In this case, is A9 greater than the expiration price? Well, A9 is $20. The expiration price is $40. It's not. All right? Now, so we're going to take the expiration price, okay, minus A9. So the expiration price, 45. We're going to subtract the 20. So now we're talking about 25 bucks. If that doesn't meet that condition, 0. And then we're going to take it times the number of puts. Are you with me? Yes? So, yeah. You may have run into this already if you've taken your Intro to Finance course. You may have taken some trades. You may have studied some about trading and all that business. Options are just simply a way for me to try to hedge away risk by putting a premium on there. That's all it's about. I want to go back up here to the, and we've got the files. Let's get out of here for a moment. And we'll close this off. And we'll go up to the modules. Now, does anybody have a question I could try to answer for you? Yes? No? Anybody? Okay. All righty. Now I've got, as I mentioned before, I had the key loaded over here. And I think I loaded that thing last weekend. And then you had the quiz and the Chapter 6 quiz. Now, as always, if you have a question about an item on a quiz or quizzes, send me an email and I'll take a look at it and try to answer. Or if you think I recorded a score wrong or anything like that, I'm human and I can make mistakes. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to the text, okay? And I want to make certain that you understand that there are a couple of things that we're trying to kind of marry up or couple up or put together for you. One of them is a typical business problem. Just like we use economic order quantity is a mathematical model that lets me try to hit the optimal amount of inventory I order. In a sense, I'm hedging. The economic order batch is the same story. In that sense, I'm hedging. Hedging meaning I'm trying to mitigate the risk that I might run into out in the world. Okay? When you buy car insurance, okay, you're buying car insurance so in the event you're in a wreck or something happens, you're insured, you're covered. Now, the insurance company is going to charge you an amount based upon some actuarial table or based upon an amount that they think is appropriate for a person of your age, driving record, etc. Okay? They're hedging their bets. Now, you're probably going to see or hear in the next few weeks or next several months about the insurers down in the Carolinas who are probably going to say, we're broke, we're out of business, we've paid out all these claims, we have no money. Can somebody tell me how we prevent that from happening? Anybody? When a disaster occurs, what does the governor always do? Anybody? What does she do? Huh? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Not inflation. What does the governor, when we have the people in Carolinas, they have all this flooding, and the insurance companies say, we're not going to be able to cover all of it unless you want us to go bankrupt. What does the governor of that state do? They contact the president and say, can you give us what? Federal disaster money. Now, the Congress doesn't sit around with federal disaster. They don't have a cookie jar in Washington with $1 trillion bills where they say, now something happens out there, folks, call us. What they have to do is go borrow. So when we cover folks' losses and the federal government declares that a disaster, the federal government steps in and says, okay, where private insurance can't cover it, we'll pay the rest. This is pretty much what happened when we had the recession, we had the economic crisis in 2007. The big banks in New York City, all right, the first really big one about to go was AIG, American Insurance Group. And AIG had an interesting business model, or piece of it. They paid people who traded in stocks. They covered, if they had derivatives, options, what we call these exotic financial products. They said, if you have a disaster, we'll cover you. Well, little did they know that the disaster hit. And then their creditors suddenly need money. And so at that point, those banks were declared, and those financial institutions were declared too big to fail. Can't let them go down. If not, they'll take the whole economy. And we came within probably 6 or 7 hours of having a total meltdown in the United States. And when we have a meltdown here, guess what? It melts everybody else because everybody has their currency pegged to the dollar. People are invested here from all over the world. When people worry about the national debt, I saw an article the other day, someone going crazy. I understand the concern. On the other hand, my question is how do you plan to collect? Because we've got the biggest military in the world. We have the biggest consumer economy in the world. And, you know, if you come to collect the debt, you're just basically killing yourself off. So we and everyone in the global financial system are in this dance of you owe me a bunch of money and I pay you back. Now, the people in Greece or some of these other countries in the European Union didn't have, one, a big army, and two, they didn't have the consumer power that we have in the United States. So they were in trouble. They literally ran out of money. So we engaged in some hedging there. And again, they're going to walk you through this. Now, if I were to have an option contract with you, I'll walk you through it again. I could say I have an option with you on November 1st, I'm going to buy your Apple. I'm going to buy 1,000 shares of Apple from you for $50. Why would I do that if I thought Apple was going to go down to 40? I'd be stupid. I think Apple's going to go up. If I think Apple's going to go down and it's at 50 right now, I'm going to have a contract with you or have an options contract to sell you Apple at $50 on November 1st, regardless of the market price. So if you take that bet with me and you have 1,000 shares come settlement time, you're going to owe me 10 grand. I have the right to sell you 50,000 shares, 50 shares at $1,000. You owe me $50,000. Okay? But the stock's only worth 40. So you have to make up that difference. When you work with some of these, it can kind of twist your brain around, puts and calls and options, futures contracts, all those kinds of things that are used to hedge against uncertainty. Now, my mom was an old Iowa farm girl, and every morning at 4 o'clock, as I was growing up, I remember my mom had the radio on in the kitchen, and she was listening to the farm report, and she was always interested in corn futures. What's that? Well, people were saying, okay, in 6 months, we will pay you $1 a pound for corn. Now, if you're a farmer and you think that it's going to be a pretty rough summer, you're going to have a drought, problems, you may say, okay, I'll take it and run. So she understood that idea of hedging, okay? Now, it works both ways. Let's say you have this contract or this agreement to sell it to somebody at $10, but the price soars to $30. You've just lost $20 a share. Now you had a sure thing and you didn't want to gamble. Those who gambled came out ahead. It's that simple. It's like, maybe you remember that some of this is associated with what we call the Monty Hall problem. And these game shows will say, okay, they'll say, do you want to take what's behind door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? And behind one of these doors is a brand new car. And I'll see people who will take door number whatever, their first trial, and they'll have a gift and they'll go, I'm good. Why? They're risk-averse people. They don't want to take the risk. So away you go. So this case, this case here has got a lot embedded here for you to take a look at. Okay, so and this one, that's going to be XLS 8. Again, that's based on those resources. And the hedging tab. Okay? Now, it's 7:23, and I know a lot of you are just whacked. You're tired. I understand that. It's the end of the week. We started a bit early, so by my count at this point, we have 83. We have 88 minutes of our magical 150 minutes we put in. Now, once we go at 150 minutes, suddenly you become smarter, brighter, more intelligent, and more diligent in your studies. Or at least that's what people believe. That's why we have these things called semester hours. So I'm going to shut it off here. If somebody has a question or questions, I'll try to work with you on that. But otherwise, expect to see a part 2 emerge. All right? So if you want to know what you ought to upload for XLS 8, then we'll take a look over here again. And this is XLS 8, and we've covered it. We've talked about it. You with me? Yes? No? And we had a little exercise in puts and calls. Options. Anybody have a question I can help you with? No? All righty. That being the case, I'm going to shut it down. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're tired. And over the weekend, I'll put out a part 2. And I'll probably go ahead and launch on into 9, maybe 10. And you be prepared to upload 8 sometime before it's due. In fact, next week is, let's see, this is the 27th. Next week is the 4th. So you really don't have anything. You have the 2 quizzes. So if you upload, that XLS 8 is due on October 11th. So we're a little bit ahead. Okay? Okay, folks, thank you much. I appreciate you being here. And we'll wrap this thing up. And all of you out there, Bruno, Cassie, Jamie, let's see, Maddie, Thomas, Go Wait, Nan, Shireen, thanks for being here.